don't want what we know out there.
How a person can go from really almost nothing to becoming a millionaire by owning rental properties.
He would always buy these flip houses, and I just remember thinking, this guy is crazy. Why would he buy that house?
In the past decade, there's been a huge surge in the peer-to-peer short-term rental market.
Become an insider. So you have to know the rules before you get the game.
Every second counts. So make every second count.
Welcome to the Real Estate Jam. Whether you're just beginning or the best of the best, we're glad you're here. We will share successes, failures, and strategies for the action-taking real estate investor. And now to your hosts, JD, Annabelle, and Melissa.
Hi, guys. Welcome to the Real Estate Jam podcast. I'm JD with my co-host, Melissa, and we have an extraordinary guest on our show today. We want to introduce you to Mr. Glenn Williams. Now, Glenn is a stud in all different types of real estate, but today we're going to be talking about what he's doing in his business, K&G Investments. Glenn's an owner-operator, and right now he's doing a lot of the acquisition side of the business with a ton of investment knowledge and really a lot of good skill sets that we want to share with you. So Glenn, thank you so much for having the time to come on the podcast with us today.
Thanks, Glenn.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Awesome. Well, Glenn, usually the way we get started, we're just going to ask you, I'm sure everybody knows who you are, but for the ones that don't, and especially our audience who might not know you, can you kind of give us a rundown of your story, where you're from, what you're doing, and how you got to where you're at now?
Absolutely. I mean, I started off buying rental properties. I had a day job and would just I bought my first property about 25 and a half years ago. I bought a duplex. I lived in one side, rented out the other. I mean, kind of a tactic that a lot of folks are looking at doing nowadays. I think it's a fantastic way to get started that way.
Agreed.
Just did that. Bought that one. A couple of years later, bought another one. A couple of years later, bought a triplex, and just kind of over the time wound up buying more and more units that way. Just to look at building up the rental portfolio with the idea that this is going to replace my income at some point. So did that for a bunch of time. About 2002, I left my day job. I got licensed as an agent. I started doing some other stuff, started doing some wholesaling, did my agent activities, did that type of work. About 4 years later, I just looked at the market in 2006 going, there's something amiss. I don't know what's going on. But it doesn't feel like I can keep making the money I'm currently making going forward. So
you had the crystal ball and you didn't let anybody else know, Glenn. What the heck, man?
I don't know. It's a crystal ball. It was just some kind of an inkling going, I'm uneasy here. And my day job was as a computer programmer. So, I mean, it's something that I could definitely go back and get into the job force and do well that way. So got back into that, did that for about 6 years. I mean, fortunate to get into that situation during all the crash years. I mean, we definitely took our lumps, just like everyone who was actively investing at that time. But then come 2012, left my day job again, started rehabbing full time, started doing a couple a year, 2-3 a year, and just started building up from there to doing significantly more. I mean, our goal this year was to do 30. COVID had other plans, but we'll still wind up having sold around 15 this year. So
that's awesome.
So we're in a good spot for going into next year, and we've got big goals for next year, but hopefully things clean up for everyone here.
Yeah, absolutely. We completely understand how COVID can have an effect on it. What is the effect that you've noticed that it actually had? Is it that you're not able to find good contractors, that your contractors weren't able to work? Were you not able to find deals? What was it that you think that knocked you off of that 30 and pushed you more towards that 15?
I honestly think the biggest thing that happened is just it threw a lot of uncertainty into people, and it caused a lot of people to really not want to make decisions. I'm getting a lot of people now who may have received my mailing months ago, and they say things like, okay, we're ready to do something now, but they weren't before. And I really think that's kind of what happened. For us too, I mean, there's just kind of a natural ebb and flow of things, and even though I've got an assistant, I've got a project manager who's just killing it for us. I mean, I'm still in the early parts of the year. I was kind of more involved with helping them get trained up. We sold 10 properties in the first 4 months this year. So we were super busy there. Well, I mean, we all know what happens if you get really busy in one area and don't attribute enough effort into another area. So I mean, I guarantee that our marketing and our acquisitions suffered a little bit there because of how that went. I mean, it's just kind of the up and down flow that you run into if you don't manage your business properly. And for me, I mean, it wasn't unexpected for me, and it was acceptable because it's part of getting the project manager really up to speed on everything we do, how we do it. But it's just, that's a natural effect of it. You have losses in business efficiencies elsewhere if you're attributing too much time one area.
Right, absolutely. Are you looking, or have you been looking at ways to eliminate that slinky effect from your business through either automation or hiring somebody else? What does that look like for you guys, or what have you been thinking about?
Yeah, I mean, I would say right now the biggest thing is that now that we've gotten through all those projects, I mean, I hired my project manager November 1st, or right away in November last year. So it hasn't quite been a year, but she's gotten up to speed on everything, exactly how we do it, everything like that. We're pretty much to a point now where I can get a property, I can do one walkthrough with her before we buy it to get our whole scope put together, everything like that based off of that walkthrough. We buy the property, we do just one additional walkthrough there. Sometimes we do one additional walkthrough there. Sometimes it's just she already knows what we're doing, and I don't have to. And then pretty much I don't visit the project anymore. It's just she handles it. Period. End of story. She handles it. I mean, she gives me updates through Slack all the time, and sends photos, gives me updates. Where are we at? How's it going? Any questions, concerns, any decisions she feels that I should be involved in making.
Hey,
there
Glenn,
we go.
On your project manager, how did you find her, and what were you looking for in that position?
I found her. She was actually a referral from one of the people who helps runs the big RIA here. I had put out a message on Facebook saying, okay, kind of early in the year, saying, okay, this is where we're at. This is kind of where we're going. We've got a growth pattern here coming up. I know in order to achieve that, I can't be a one-man show anymore. So I'm going to need to hire for these positions. And at that time I had said, okay, I'm going to need to get a project manager. I'm going to need to get an acquisitions person. I'm going to need to get an assistant. I hired a project manager and an assistant last year. I didn't hire acquisitions. It's still something that's a little tough to take off my plate, just because you hold that one close to the vest because you know that's where the money is. And it's a little hard to build that kind of skill set into someone. I mean, when I look at it and say I've been doing this 25 years, there's stuff you just learn and know and naturally do that it takes a while for someone else to pick up. So she was a referral, and we started talking last year in the spring. I mean, she had a corporate job that she was happy with, and we just talked. I'm going, okay, where are you at? What are you looking to do? Everything like that. I did have her do a disc test just to see what aptitudes were there.
What did that look like?
Actually had, if I remember right, pretty high D, little lower I. I mean, I think it was almost the V, where it's
Okay.
like D, little lower on the I, a little lower on the S, and then higher on the C. If I
Right.
remember right, I think that's what that was. I'm
That-
not positive.
If she's a good project manager, that sounds about right, right?
AD, will you elaborate a little bit on that for people who don't know what that is or how to use it?
Yeah, well, there is a personality test called the DISC personality test. I think in our company we use the free one that Tony Robbins has on his website. If you just Google Tony Robbins DISC, DISC, and it's a personality test that you can take, and it'll analyze the type of person you are. And there's different categories. And like D is for drive. So the higher the D, the higher your drive is. I is for influence. So if you had somebody with a high D, they would be that very, very competitive person. If you had somebody with a high I, they would be the person who's friends with everybody, who could never met a stranger, those kind of qualities. And then I'm not off the top of my head, I don't know what the other ones are, but after you've taken this test, it gives you a printout of where you fall on there, and then it analyzes and tells you what those qualities mean, what your motivators are, what are things that you like to do, what there are things that you don't like to do. And I know, at least for me and Melissa, it was almost spot on.
Crazy.
Like if I'd known somebody for 20 years and they were with me every single day, and then they had to write a description of what I was like, it would have been what this DISC test said. There's also two versions, right? There is your natural version, and then based off of your current situation or your current job. So and it gets really deep and a lot more in depth than that. Glenn, do you have anything to help explain a little bit better what that piece of it is?
No, I mean, that's kind of it. I mean, honestly, the biggest thing that everyone talked about, you go back 2-3 years, everyone starts saying, oh my goodness, the DISC test, this is the holy grail, this, that, and the other thing. And I mean, and we all start to learn as we lean on that, well, it's not the holy grail that we thought it was. It's a little piece, it's an indicator, but it's not necessarily something that you should really definitely make decisions on.
Right. I like the way some of our mentors have described it before, as it helps influence the decision, but it doesn't make the decision. And more so than telling you whether or not this person can do this type of job, what it does is let you know how, as a owner or a boss in your company, how these people prefer to be communicated with. Because if you can communicate with your employee correctly, you can get them to operate on the level that you need them to operate on. And really, I think that's what we've seen it have the biggest impact on, is understanding what somebody might be good at or might be bad at, and then also how I should communicate with them through training or feedback or all of these other things that happen in a business on a daily basis.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, the big thing is, I look at it, and I mean, I'm in the acquisitions role. To be a good acquisitions person, you're supposed to have a really high D, really high I. My D rating is like a 6 or an 8. I mean, it's insanely low.
Right.
But I mean, I kind of compensate for that just by being who I am and having done it enough and understand how to interact with folks. But yeah, if someone were looking for an acquisitions person, and they were basing on DISC, I'd get laughed out of the room.
You wouldn't even make it past the first cut.
Exactly.
Well, that's why, and that just goes to show that, it's not the end all be all, and nothing really is cookie cutter. It's just another tool to put into your toolbox to help you lead your company a better way.
Yeah, that's exactly it. It's a tool, just like everything else. It's not the answer. It's a part of it's a piece of the pie. I mean, it's a little part of the equation.
Glenn, as a follow-up question, how do you compensate a project manager?
Well, for me, and for me and discussing with her, we just do a straight salary.
Okay.
I know some people do various various bonuses or base, or I mean, I know people who just do it based X amount per project or this, that, or the other thing. I mean, she came from a corporate background, and I mean, that's just kind of the norm, and we were comfortable doing it that way. I'm sure we could structure it another way if we really wanted to, but she's comfortable that way. I'm comfortable that way. I mean, I have no questions, concerns about her ability, her work, or anything like that. I mean, pretty much going back a little bit, kind of about where I found her and stuff. I mean, it was a 6-month project or process for me to hire her.
Mm-hmm.
We just would talk intermittently and say, well, this is kind of what this is. She had another opportunity which looked like it was going to be good in the company. Ultimately, it wasn't. So we just talked some more. What really sold me on her was the fact that we were I was discussing tools that we might use to manage the projects and stuff, and I had purchased the house flipping spreadsheet, and I told her about it, and I'm like, well, here, take a look at it. And we talked that evening at, I don't know, 6 or 7 o'clock, something like that. And she sent me an email talking about everything she found out about the software and about this, that, and the other thing, and what it can do, everything like that. She sent it at like 11 or midnight. and I'm just going, okay, this person lives and breathes organization, coordination, systemization. And it's like, that's who I want in that role. I mean, it's kind of like in my computer programming days. Ultimately, I mean, I was capable of doing it, but when I went home, I wasn't geeking out and doing server stuff or computer stuff, this, that, and everything till the wee hours of the morning. I wasn't doing that. If you want a programmer, that's the person you really want. If you want someone who's going to be big into process and systems and organization and stuff like that, you want someone who lives and breathes that. That's who they are at their core. And once I saw that happen, I was like, okay, I need to bring her on. And I mean, it was still a few months before we actually did, just the timing wasn't right. Ultimately, we stayed in contact, talked. We got in contact one day and said, let's go.
That's
And
great.
and it worked. And we're both really happy with how it's going right now.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think that's the type of person that we're always striving for, somebody who loves real estate as much as I do, right? Like, as soon as we get off of this, I'll still go and listen to other people's podcasts about real estate for 4 hours before I put the kids in bed or whatever, but I can't always expect everybody to be like that and like real estate and like it the same way that I do. But if you can find an employee that cares about it that much, that's phenomenal. And then if you can find one that cares about it that much to learn it, but then doesn't want to start their own business doing, competing in your market, I think that's even better. Not that competition is bad, but most of the people that we found with the drive to learn this stuff on their own, they got a lifespan in a company, a year or 2 years, 6 months, and then they are ready to start on their own, which I can't blame them, because that's exactly the way I am.
Well, yeah, but it just depends. I mean, some folks, that's what it is. I saw some statistics somewhere, I think earlier today, where, I mean, pretty much like 10% of the population are drivers,
Mm-hmm.
are really after it, and 90%, I mean, are more in the okay, kind of go with the flow and just everything like that, not really highly driven that way to go do that thing. I mean, so hopefully you find someone who's a rock star who's going to hang around a long time, and they and you can do really well together and really have a good, strong relationship long term to build something really strong, provide a quality service, provide quality products to people, and just build a nice, strong business for everyone involved.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. I guess, Glenn, maybe if it's okay, if we can talk about one, where you're finding your deals. I know that probate's a big thing for you, and then maybe we look at kind of the way you run your numbers and how you're making these good decisions that lead to being able to do 15 flips in the middle of a pandemic.
Sure. I'm a direct mail guy. I'm boring. I do direct mail. Uh, everyone's getting on the cold calling and texting and pay per click, and I do direct mail and I do SEO, and that's kind of it. I'm a big proponent of doing direct mail to niche lists, just because I'm a huge fan of talking to people who have some degree of motivation. I'll talk to them and hopefully they have equity, or if they don't, I've been around long enough that I could roll out some other options for them that might work if they need to sell. But the way I'm wired is I want to help folks, and if I'm talking to people with motivation because there's a reason that they need to sell something, well, we can have a really good conversation there. I can build a lot of rapport with them, just because I'm there to help. Sometimes me helping them looks like me buying their house. Sometimes it's just me giving them some advice. Maybe it's just explaining the process, explaining some options for them. Who knows? But I'm there to have a conversation, help them out. If it works for us to buy the house, fantastic. And if it doesn't, well, one of our core values is to leave everyone better than we found them. And that's our objective when we talk to everyone in the situation. So most of those people that I can really help out are folks who are on some degree of a motivation list. And you're talking about probate lists, you're talking about eviction lists, tax delinquent list, vacant property list, inheritance. All of that type of stuff. We've got, we started doing fire damage lists. All of that type of stuff where someone may very well be saying, yeah, it's time for me to go. It's time for me to sell this property. So I believe in hitting those lists. I've been doing postcards almost entirely. I'm starting to switch over to letters now, just because honestly, for about the past month, we've been getting 3 to 5 political postcards a month or a day. So, yeah. So it's like, well, you send someone a postcard, it's easy to get lost in this stack of postcards. Mm-hmm. You have a fancy looking letter or an envelope that looks fancy looking, that looks hand done or looks out of the ordinary. People are going to open it. So I've started going the letter route more so now. The last round of 10,000 mailers I sent out like a month and a half ago, best response I've had on mailers ever. Wow. Now it's a lot of take me off your list,
because at least they're getting opened.
They're getting opened. Yeah. They're getting opened. The message is getting noticed. But one of the houses that I bought just a couple weeks ago was off of that list, and I'm talking to someone else. I think there's a legit shot we're buying it, came off that list too. Right. So since since we're not doing huge volume, I don't need to expand into all these other marketing channels.
Right.
I can choose and say, I'm going to do direct mail. Yeah, I'm going to do maybe super targeted lists or niche lists one month, and then alternate. Maybe the next month, maybe I am doing an equity mailer of some kind. So just to kind of get more mail out and just alternate and mail like every 60 days to each of those lists and go forward, just to kind of balance some stuff out. But with probates, evictions, lists like that are timely, we send those out every week.
Right.
So we've got that going, and then we've got the others that are just every other month type thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And then that's what we've started doing too. We stole, with permission, we stole Glenn's marketing plan for probates and have been putting that into effect. We haven't got a deal from it yet, but we have had some contacts with people, and it's kind of, I feel like with the probates, it's either a really fast process or a little bit slower, where you're more building a relationship, providing assistance where you can, while the process works its way through the courts before they have the ability to make a decision or move one way or another. So we're in the middle of that right now, and I'm sure that's going to pan out for us. It's just a matter of time on that list. And I get in trouble because I don't always get in and pull the records like I'm supposed to on time, and so
Right.
maybe I'm a little bit behind on our probate list, and I need to speed that up so that I don't get yelled at anymore by my co-host. But
and that's how it goes. I mean, all you're trying to do is, I mean, get attention, get the call. I mean, that's all the marketing is. You just want to be one of the ones that they call. I mean, most people say they're going to call a handful of people or something like that. You just want to be one of them.
Yep.
Because I mean, usually I figure if I'm talking to folks, if they're bringing three people into the house to go off and like get numbers from or get options from, or this, that, or the other thing, I figure that I can do better than 1 in 3. I mean, I'll get more than that just because I feel comfortable with what the service we can provide and the relationship I can build with people and make sure everything is done for them that needs to get done. But it's just getting the foot in the door right up front, and that's all marketing is.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, in regards to that, Glenn, I guess, how do you determine, like what your offer price is going to be? What are you using for your own criteria? If we were presenting you with an offer, how would you know, or presenting you with a property, how would you know whether it's a yes or a no for you? What does that look like in your business?
For me, I've got a spreadsheet that I've put together that I run everything through, and I mean, I'm not like a lot of folks who are saying, "Oh my goodness, you have to get in the house and you have to sign it up right there, right on the first contact in the house." It happens with me 1 out of 10 times. I mean, it's just I'm the low pressure. You know what? Let's see what we can put together. Let's see how we can help you out. I'm going to go back to my house and run everything through my spreadsheet so I can put together the best possible offer for you that I can. That type of attitude. I mean, I'm no pressure. It's just like, if it happens, great. If it doesn't, so be it. So I walk a house, I take a ton of pictures, I have a long conversation. I go back home based on the pictures and the notes I take right when I get back out to my car after walking through the property. Just plunk all the figures in. This is about how much everything's going to cost. Here's how long the project should take. We usually shoot for rehabs if it's a one of our normal rehabs, which seems to be about 60 grand, give or take. I mean, that's just a normal rehab of ours. Then we shoot. I mean, if it's off of our own marketing, I mean, we're shooting to make 30 or 40 off of that. So we just kind of back into that figure based off of, here's our hold time, here's our financing that we've got available, everything involved with that. Now, again, I'm a broker, so I'm collecting a commission, and I include that commission amount in that 30 to 40. So I mean, if I'm getting paid $5,000 on commission, it's like, okay, well, that's in that 30 to 40 equation. So we just do it that way and come up with our figures that way. If it's a deal coming from a wholesaler or a realtor referral where they're getting paid a commission on bringing it in or something like that, then our numbers adjust a little bit because we didn't have any marketing spend on it.
Right.
So we're willing to take a little less on that.
That makes sense.
Or if we've got like 2 of the properties we've got right now, which are more carpet and paint type jobs, we're putting 30 grand into them. On those types of projects, we're in and out of those in 3 to 4 weeks. Well, we can make 20 to 30 on that, and it still makes sense.
You know what strikes me as funny, Melissa, I'm not sure if you noticed this as well, but when most people are talking about paint and carpet, lipstick on a pig type rehabs, the number they always use is like 10 grand paint and carpet. But for us in and the way that we analyze everything, paint and carpet is 30 grand. If we have to completely do the house from the studs out, we're looking at on a 1,500 square foot house, we're looking minimum 80 grand. If we have mold remediation, we look at 108 grand on rehabs. And you're the first person, Glenn, I think that we've talked to that paint and carpet that's a real number to at least to us. 30 grand for paint and carpet when you take into consideration that I'm not painting and I'm not on my hands and knees laying the carpet. 30 grand is what it's going to take. And I just, so many like paint and carpet, we get deals from the wholesaler, paint and carpet, 10 grand repairs. And I'm like, oh my gosh.
It's crazy because I mean, just doing flooring and just doing interior painting is 10 grand.
Yes.
Just those two items. Add on the other stuff. If you're doing new appliances, fantastic. If you're leaving paint and carpet, you're leaving the cabinets. So I mean, if you're popping the tops off those, tossing granite on or something like that, all of a sudden there's that cost there.
There's another 10 grand. Yeah.
You've got your plumbing costs, you've got your electrical costs, you've got, one of these we did have to replace the HVAC on. So I mean, honestly, I think that may have been closer to 35 rather than 30. But I mean, even the paint and carpets would include something like, oh, we're replacing the water heater.
Right.
Okay. Well, that's $1,000, give or take. So it all really adds up, and people don't understand it.
Right. And especially in one of the things that we get, because we'll get a paint and carpet type house and the homeowner will say, well, I got it quoted and it'll take me about 16 grand to get this done. And I think it's like, hey, well, I'm glad that you can afford to do that, but I have to use these contractors. Have you seen how much these contractors are charging people? And go about it that way, because that's one of the objections we get. It's only paint and carpet, only take 30 grand, or well, they say 10 grand, but we know, that it's a lot more than that. And
a lot more
than that, especially in some of, one of the markets that we're in is so strapped for contractors that they're able to drive their prices up. So in Montana, a roof that would cost me $5,000, Melissa always makes me account for like 9 to 10 grand for the same roof.
Yeah. And I use the example to folks saying, okay, well, yeah, you know what, if you wanted to replace the roof, you can go off and have you and your buddies go off and get some pizza and beer and everything like that, and have a roofing party, and all you're paying for is materials and some pizza and beer and pop and stuff. So yeah, you can do it cheaper, but you know what? Everything we do has to be licensed, has to be permitted, has to be inspected, everything like that. Which, I mean, when push comes to shove, pushes all of our costs up to where they are. And since we're not swinging the hammer, like you had mentioned earlier, it's like we're hiring it all out. So sure, if I were doing 2 a year and I wanted to do all the labor and stuff myself, yeah, I could do things differently. But if you're actually running a business where you're not the one doing the work and everything, you have to attribute the costs appropriately.
Right. Absolutely. That's something that we deal with not every day, but probably pretty close to an everyday
for sure.
basis. Glenn, I guess I want to know if you were talking to somebody who just wanted to start out in this, because I know it's been a while. So if you can think back to when you first started, there's something that you wanted to know, or if you could tell yourself how to do this, what kind of advice would you give somebody just starting out?
I mean, just starting out is the realization that there's a handful of skills you really need to work on up front if you're going to wind up having some degree of success. And I always point people to people get distracted. People get distracted starting out. They say, well, I'm going to be busy. Well, you can be busy and not effective.
Right.
What are you doing that are the activities that are actually going to move the needle for you, where you're actually going to move forward? Are you actually concentrating on the revenue generating activities, or are you concentrating on busy work? Are you researching properties and there are properties that you would have no chance of buying anyway because you've had no conversations as far as, okay, are we even in the ballpark price wise or anything? Now, that being said, I mean, first things first, you need to have a way of getting in conversation with folks. Whatever that looks like, however that is, you need to do that. If you're not talking to people, you're not buying houses. In general, I mean, there are some markets that people are still having success buying on MLS or buying at auctions or things like that.
Right.
But in general, you're getting properties that at a price and a situation that makes sense for you to rehab via direct marketing. So you need to find a way to get in conversation with folks. And I always recommend to folks to hit the niche lists.
Yeah.
I mean, hit the motivation lists, just because, especially starting out, one of the skill sets you need to learn is the ability to speak with people and have that conversation. And boy, those conversations are a lot easier when someone's talking to you and they need your help.
Right.
It's a lot easier to grow and learn and hear what motivation sounds like and hear what the situation is, so that you can really work to come up with something that's going to help someone, as opposed to, okay, I'm going to contact people with equity and they call and say, well, if the price is right, I'll sell, or well, if I'll sell for $1 million or this or that. It's easier to learn and grow and start becoming better in all of the conversation and everything associated with that side of the business if you're talking to the right folks.
Right.
So there's that. And then just when it comes time to be making offers, it's have some degree of understanding of the numbers and everything like that. I mean, I tell newer people around here all the time, I say, if you've got something and you're not sure, get in touch with me.
Right.
I'll let you know where we're at and let you know if it kind of makes sense where you're at. I give people the quick and dirty rule, saying that, okay, if you're buying the house, you gotta be somewhere in the 50 to 60% of fixed up value range. It's like, if you're not there 98% of the time, there's nothing there.
Right.
I mean, it's a quick and dirty ballpark, but it at least gives people an honest assessment of what it is.
Right.
So there's that. And then when it comes time to go under contract, just realize you're new, you don't know exactly what you're doing. Have some contingencies in your contracts, or just have a contingency that lets you out. I mean, don't tie it up for 2 months on someone and you don't know what you're doing and you're trying to wholesale a deal out and just stringing them along. Don't do that.
Right.
But I mean, if you have a week in there or 2 weeks or something like that, with the idea that, okay, if it doesn't work out, you're saying, okay, we can't do the deal. Sure, I get that.
Right.
But just give yourself an out. If you have a legitimate out, you shouldn't be scared of writing the agreement. But you need to make sure your numbers are at least somewhere in the ballpark. I mean, don't tie up anything that you can just because you can, and just because you know a little bit more than the homeowner does, and you're just going to string them along and hope and pray that someone buys something at a price way above what they should.
Right. Yeah. So you're saying if you're a new wholesaler or a new investor, you should be operating in an ethical manner and not taking advantage of people because you read one book.
Yeah, that's absolutely the truth. I mean, I push on a lot of stuff like that around here too.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of good in the industry. There's a lot of bad in the industry. So be the good.
Right. And one of the things, though, I think that is important to mention is I don't know anybody who goes out with the villain mindset, but what I know is that new people who are just learning, if you're not careful with who you're learning your information from, you could become the villain and not even realize that that's what's going on. So it's very important that you pay attention to the ethics of the people that you're learning how to do this business from, to make sure that you don't accidentally find yourself the wicked witch of the West. You need to make sure that you are operating in an ethical manner. If you wouldn't do it to your own grandma, you probably shouldn't do it to some other homeowner.
Yeah, I mean, are you out really trying to help someone, or are you trying to make a quick buck? What's the goal? Now, I mean, obviously the numbers need to work for you. I mean, I'd love to buy every house I go look at, but some of them just don't make sense. I mean, plain and simple, it doesn't work for both of us, so we don't do the deal. If you're out there really trying to do the right thing for everyone, then you should feel pretty good about it. Now, going off, things I've seen, some of my pet peeves are things like, okay, well, deciding, oh, I'm going to have this inspection, and knowing full well that whatever number you tied it up at initially is not the number you want to get it at, because you're going to come back with an inspection and chop off tens of thousands of dollars based off inspection results, and hope they'll just take that reduction because they think they're tied to you already because they're under contract.
Right.
I mean, that's a big pet peeve of mine, and I know bigger investors, some of them, who do that, and I personally would never do that. I mean, I don't think that's the right way to do business.
I don't think that's the right way, especially going into it. But if we get to the house and it's not in the condition that we locked it up on, something like that, I get it. I think, though, one of the tactics that we use, which I stole from somebody in a mastermind group, is that scorched earth policy, which is, when we go in and maybe I don't get lock up a number that is acceptable because we don't do the high numbers and bring it back down, what I'll do is I make sure that I let the homeowner know, hey, this is what some wholesalers and real estate investors have been known to do in this area. They're going to come in, lock it up at 106,000, and then come and tell you that, hey, your roof is not good, so we're going to need to knock off $10,000. And oh, by the way, there was one crack on the side foundation, so we're going to need to knock off another $10,000. So even though you got it at 106, now they've knocked you down to 86. And explain that process as we gracefully walk away from the appointment, and let them know that if they find themselves in that situation, want us to review the contract or anything like that we can do that as well. And I'm sure that other wholesalers who operate that way do not appreciate us telling the truth. But it does leave somebody in a better position than the way we found them, which falls in line with your core values, Glenn.
Yeah, that's one of the things. Honestly, I mean, I do something similar all the time, and I just say, kind of, here's how the business works.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes, with the way I'm mailing and how quickly we're getting our mail out, I'm usually the first or one of the first people to meet with them.
Right.
And all it does is increase my credibility if I go off and meet with them and say, here's what's going to happen. Here's how people do things, this, that, and the other thing, da, 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 da. And all of a sudden someone shows up and they do the exact thing that I said they were going to do. And I talked to the seller later on, and they're going, you were absolutely right. I'm like, it's what it is. I mean, I know the good and I know the bad of the industry. So
absolutely. And with that, Glenn, we want to make sure that we're respectful of your time. We appreciate you coming on today. Can you share with our audience where they can find you and kind of what you got going on, and how they can hear more from Glenn Williams?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you're in the Twin Cities metro area, I mean, we're not holding meetings now or anything like that, and we haven't for half a year. But I do run a small RIA there called Twin RIA. I mean, they can find that on Facebook, and they can join that. I mean, it's not as active as it has been in the past, just because we're not having any live meetings. So they can catch me there. They can find me on Facebook. They can message me. They can friend request me, things like that. Business-wise, I mean, our rehabbing business is K&G Investments. My project manager and I, since we're really starting to kind of get a lot better at tightening down our timelines on our projects and everything like that, are going to be starting to help folks out virtually, kind of on the front end of all the coordinating and stuff of their projects, to help make sure that they start their projects with strong scopes of work, Gantt charts, timelines, materials lists, projects plans, everything like that, so that they can actually show up professionally with their contractors they want to hire, and should be able to get better pricing and better timelines on that, because they're showing up and not showing up as a professional, not an amateur saying, okay, what do we do? How do we do this? It's no, here's it all put together. So we are working on getting that launched, but I know, like we joked around earlier, it's we started to get busy in our core business.
Right.
So we haven't launched it yet. That the website for that is reiprojectmanagement.com. And I mean, right now it's just a splash page. If someone wants to contact us through that, that works out fine too. It's something we do want to roll out here. We're going to roll out. It's just a matter of exactly when, because I mean, I need the time and my project manager need the time too, away from our core business, but the core business pays the bills. So we want to help out folks, because I mean, I see the hundreds of thousands of dollars that I've lost over the last 8 years doing this due to inefficiencies and overspending on a variety of things, just mostly due to poor project plans up front. So, I mean, I'd like to help keep some other folks from encountering that same cost and loss, if at all possible. It's just a matter of we need the time to get rolled out.
Right. Well, that's going to be an amazing service. I look forward to seeing where that endeavor takes you. Glenn, like I said, again, we really appreciate you coming on the show today and sharing some of your knowledge. And I can't wait till we get to see you again in person. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, looking forward to seeing you guys hopefully sooner rather than later. Absolutely. Yeah. I appreciate you guys having me on.
That's great. Awesome.
Thank you for listening to the Real Estate Jam.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you for all you do.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. For more information and updates, check out our website, shorefrontrestorations.com, or find us on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn at Shorefront Restorations. If you have any questions, feel free to drop us an email at info@shorefrontrestorations.com. See you next episode.